gave you so many clues, and you failed.
You are not a cop anymore.
There's a killer out there. He's laughing at us.
I'm here! Here!
Some people win, some people lose. The game is over.
Amelia?
Hello and welcome to the After Watches podcast. I'm Ryan.
I'm Alan.
And I'm Devon.
So this is a bit of a change. Normally Alan takes point on this, but we're doing a movie today that I've seen, and Allen and Devon haven't, which I'm very surprised at this one. The movie that we're doing today is The Bone Collector, obviously, since that's what's in the tagline for this episode. So,
unless I name it something else.
Unless you name it something else.
Oh, you should name it something else.
So, so The Bone Collector, some background. It was a movie that came out in 1999. It stars Denzel Washington and Angelina Jolie. So, Devon, I know that Alan had seen pieces of this before, but not the video, and it's a movie in its entirety. What did you think of it your first time through?
So I haven't seen anything. Like, I haven't seen any clips of it. I haven't seen anything of it. I didn't even know what it was about, honestly, until I watched it. There are parts of it that I really loved, and there are parts of it that I think I am too 2000s about. And I think that some parts of it didn't age really well, and I'm hoping to get into that. Because I didn't watch this like in the 90s or like when it came out. I watched it for the first time in 2019. So I'm really curious to talk about some of this stuff, especially from where you're coming from, having seen it a lot earlier in life.
Yeah, Alan?
I remember seeing this on like TNT, like movie of the night, like just clips flipping through. Because I remember the image of Denzel Washington in the hospital bed, just being all paralyzed and stuff. So, so I've never really seen the whole thing through, but I knew enough about it. I was like, okay, Denzel's paralyzed, Angelina Jolie, and I guess Queen Latifah. But
this cast is stacked.
It is.
There's Queen Latifah, Michael Rooker's in it, Ed O'Neill's in it.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, when it comes to me watching movies, and I've said this before, like, I'm not one on actors' names, but knowing faces and just knowing who's in this film, it's like for the first 20 minutes of this movie going, like every 5 minutes you have a scene open or some character comes around a corner and you're like, and he's in this? And he's in this? And she's in this? Like, just it keeps on going for like the first 20 minutes.
Yeah. Michael, or one of those was spoiled for me because Devin got really excited when he saw Ed O'Neill's name. And I was like, damn it, I didn't watch it yet.
Yeah, that was my fault.
I love his character.
I'm surprised Ed O'Neill is the best Ed O'Neill.
It really is, though.
Mm-hmm. Like, I love him in this simply because, like, I feel like he takes on roles that just fit him. Like, I feel like besides the like dramatics of certain reactions throughout the movie, I feel like he kind of just played himself to a point, because I mean, I can see him being that kind of a person.
I feel like this character is closer to the real Ed O'Neill than anything else that he's played. Like,
I can agree with that.
Like Married with Children or Modern Family, because they're both kind of exaggerated forms of anybody.
Yeah.
So
it's true. This was a more grounded character.
Yeah. Now, when it came to Alan, when it came to you watching the movie, like you said, you saw it on network TV a while ago, and it kept on going back and forth. What scenes did you already like? When this movie got brought up for us to do, like, what's the first things that like ran through your head about it? Like,
literally just Denzel in a hospital bed, paralyzed. That's all I knew about this movie. And they're trying to solve a murder.
Yeah,
somebody's collecting bones. That's about it.
Good. So the basics.
But yeah.
No, I have a question. As somebody that, like I said, when it comes to movies and stuff, people being here and younger versions. And this isn't a spoiler at all. The guy that Angelina Jolie is with in the scene where she's getting ready to go to work.
Yeah.
Is that the stepdad from Ant-Man?
Yes, it is.
It is.
Oh, is it really?
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
It's Bobby
So-
Cannavale.
Young though,
Yeah.
young,
Man.
which makes me happy because I really like The Bone Collector and I really like the Ant-Man movies.
Yeah.
So to me, because they both take place in New York, it's the same universe.
They could
No,
be the same
Ant-Man's in San Francisco.
Oh, he moved then. He was
He
in
could've
New York.
moved.
He lived in New York. His therapist said that he needed more. He wasn't getting anything in New York, so he moved to San Francisco. Became a cop.
Packed up his eyebrows, moved right across country.
Exactly.
And Doctor Strange later goes on to fix Denzel's spine so he can walk again.
Yes.
I'm okay with that.
Same
I'm
here.
okay with that.
Expect no. So before, because I mean, this is one of the very few podcasts that I'm actually lead on this, and I'm actually not feeling like I'm doing well. But anyway, Denzel Washington is one of my favorite actors of all time.
Yeah.
And I'm actually very sad that I haven't seen as many movies as he's actually done because I haven't seen them all. But when it comes to the type of characters he plays, I will admit he's kind of like typecast for a well-respected actor. He plays one or two different types of people, and that's it.
What are the two types of people?
Well, one is being headstrong and being the best in their field, because because in The Siege, he plays like the top FBI person in the country. He's just based in New York, dealing with the terrorist threat.
Okay.
In the movie Flight, he's coked out of his head, and he's able to save as many people as he did, given the circumstances. And he's, again, extremely headstrong in a bad way because he messed up his entire life. But it's still kind of that same person. And I feel like the character in Bone Collector is still the same thing. He's the best in the field, extremely headstrong. He knows how to get what he wants. And he just goes along that avenue. And then there's the other movies he's in where he just plays like the angry man on the mission. And that's really it. Like, that's all I've seen from him. The thing is, I think he's the best at what he does when it comes to
He's got that like perfect intense face where like
He
the
does.
second he like flares up those eyes, you're like, oh, Denzel.
I love his rants. I really do love his rants, especially when he goes on about like his characters had it and he just slams
King Kong ain't got nothing on me.
he just goes off. Like, if I had to make a movie and in the script there was a character that had like one or two like just like boiling point rants, I would want him to play that character.
Absolutely.
I'm looking at his IMDb page right now, and all of the posters are of him staring intensely into the distance.
Like
That's
I said,
his thing, man. He's so good at it.
Like I said, and the thing is, from the movies I've seen, he's usually some type of like governmental official or law enforcement officer, or he's got a job where he's in a position of power where he can tell people what to do. Because to be perfectly honest, I mean, with how hard he goes on that type of a character, I don't know if you could make a movie where he starts off as like a lonely private and then works his way up. I feel like him as a lonely private would get himself in trouble way too quick.
Right.
I'm curious what his character's like in the Magnificent Seven, because I haven't seen that one.
I
yet.
haven't seen that
haven't
either,
either.
mainly because I'm not a big like Western, like cowboy person. I'm not.
Okay.
So that's, I mean, but I mean, it's one of those things that obviously for this, like,
Well, I think
I'll
if-
watch a Western.
I think if we're going to watch a Western, it's not going to be the remake of the Magnificent Seven.
It'll be
it's
the
gonna be
original.
something else.
Right.
If we do
Absolutely.
that
It's probably something with Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until they make Magnificent 8, and then we'll make it just in time for the sequel to come out.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then we'll have to watch it.
Yeah.
So, full disclosure, when I sat down to watch this movie last night,
Yeah.
I could not get through it. But I'm pretty sure I had a fever
Okay.
because
Oh, no.
I was laying on my couch covered in blankets. I paused the movie to get up and get a drink, and then I got to my kitchen and just could not shake because I was so cold.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, okay,
That
I'm not
sounds like a
finishing this
fever.
movie tonight.
That sounds like a fever.
And then I was
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna go to sleep. And this was like 9:30 last night. Like, I'm going to go to sleep and sleep this off and see how I feel. And then woke up this morning feeling 1,000 times better. I was like, okay, I'm going to finish watching this. So I started watching it on my tablet in my bed.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to get out of bed yet, but I'm going to finish this movie. God damn it.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. So, did you guys want to talk about anything that really doesn't have? I mean, granted, this movie's like almost 30 years old. I mean, actually,
it's
it is
20 years old.
It's 20 years old. So, I mean, spoilers is especially when you take into account that the main antagonist, the villain, has a very, very obvious voice. So in the trailer, when he's I mean, when the trailer for this movie came out when I was younger, I knew that actor already, and he's and that actor's done voice acting before at that point. So I was like a freshman in high school because my freshman year of high school was the 99 to 2000 school year. So I remember seeing the trailer for this, and I couldn't name him, but I knew who it was. I was like, oh, you know, and that was one of the first times a trailer ruined a movie for me because I knew automatically who the bad guy was. But I mean, granted, throughout the film too, he's also, you know, you hear his voice before you see his face anyway. Right. So I mean, at some point, if you know the actor and you know his voice, it gets ruined because they don't do anything to hide it.
Yeah. I have a small bone to pick about this movie.
Ah, I like the pun. Okay,
Tell me.
fine.
I see what you did there.
Going for that. Okay, so this movie was made in 1999.
Yeah.
Why not just cast Christopher Reeve?
Oh man.
Valid.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say
Solid
that.
point.
No, I mean, it's
I mean, the
definitely a good
action
point.
scenes towards the end would probably be a little rough,
Yeah.
especially for 1999. But in the opening scene,
Yeah.
but I think there's ways around that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a huge Christopher Reeve fan. I was just like, man, this would have been great for him. Like, he could have done this.
Yeah.
So I did want to bring that up. So I watched yesterday. I went out to the theater and I just saw The Upside, which is Bryan Cranston and Kevin Hart. Bryan Cranston plays a quadriplegic, and then I turned on this movie where Denzel Washington plays a quadriplegic. So I got two different, not different takes, but two different like actors who weren't quadriplegic playing something with or somebody with that ailment. How do you guys think he did?
I think he did a really good job because, like, it's easy to just not get out of a hospital bed, but like the intensity that you see with what he can do, like just his face and like they did a really good job with the makeup. So he's sweating a lot when he's like stressed.
And I've never seen so much emotion come through a finger before.
Well, yeah.
I mean, let's just be obvious with that. Like, they actually made like him using the mouse with his hand taped down to it. Like, there was, you know, like you could tell how frustrated he was getting by you know, like how his finger was using the ball mouse and how and especially how he was clicking. And I feel like that's what I feel like with him and his intensity for Denzel playing the character. I think that's why, for me at least, this movie is as well as it is. Like, for how much I like it, I feel like that's one of the reasons why I do, because he has that ability to, like, you know, his facial expressions, and like you said, the makeup is with him sweating.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Other than that, I don't really have anything that's not spoilerish. Oh, I do have one thing to say. This is from 1999.
yeah.
It's 20 years ago now. Holy hell.
Wow.
A lot of great movies came out that year.
Oh, they did.
So I've been meaning to talk to you guys about doing this. I think this is the first one of this. We need to take a look at the list of those movies, because I'm sure there's some that we've seen and like, but the others haven't. So we need to start looking at that.
Or have seen, but it was on network television, don't really remember it.
Yeah.
I mean, for the listeners, we do take that in as having not seen it. Like, if you remember seeing it as a kid, but you don't remember it, like there's...
Yeah, seeing Die Hard on network television doesn't count, because Yippee-Ki-Yay Melon Farmer does not...
Melon Farmer.
They just did a whole episode of the Goldbergs on that premise. They had like a 5-minute long joke about melons.
I love that.
But yeah, so just something to keep in mind in the future.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
But,
So
Devin, do you have anything that's not really spoilerish? I mean, like I said, I know the movie's 20 years
without
old.
spoilery things, there were two things that I think I realized I'm too like millennial about. The first thing is the use of slow-mo. I think that because cameras back then didn't shoot in a high enough like frame rate, the slow-mo looked really choppy, and I didn't love it. And the other thing was in one scene, they were walking outside of Denzel's apartment to get into their car, and it was just gratuitous blue filter. Did any of you guys catch that?
yeah, the white balance was definitely off in that shot.
Well, I thought that was an artistic choice. Like I thought they wanted
it. If it was a weird one.
Are you talking about the scene where they go to rescue, where Angelina's going out on her first like thing, and they get in the car and she's explaining, to save the wife. Yeah,
that was a little spoiler,
I always thought it was because like, let's see, we lost the Red October, right? We didn't release that one. Okay, so yeah, for the listeners, if this is your first time listening, we did like a month's worth of recordings and they all got lost, so we can't, do them. But anyway, we talked about the very last scene in Red October where it was supposed to be a night shot, and the blue-gray filter that was on it was just awful compared to the like blue screen, like static picture that was behind them as they were supposed to be sailing through like a river. And so whenever I see like a real outdated, bad like filter shot, I always expect it's because for some reason the director or writer wanted the weather to play a point and they needed it to be cloudy. So I just figured it was like, oh, it's supposed to be cloudy. It's New York, shadows, whatever. I don't know. I mean, it was definitely striking though. It does kind of take you out of it a little bit.
But I think color does play a big part in this movie because like all of Denzel's apartment is just tones of brown.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think that's deliberate, and like it matches the like, not to be weird about this, but it matches the same color scheme as like the Peregrine Falcon that you see on the windowsill and like taking off, and like everything kind of matches the environment a little bit. And so for that point I was like, okay, they're going for that. Like not my cup of tea, but that's what they're going for.
Yeah. And I think the whole film in itself is a lot of brown and orange tones, and then like a lot of it, like when they're in the tunnels or rescuing people from the docks, it's dark because it's night. But I think that shot of blue that you were talking about is just so jarring because it's different from everything else. And maybe that's used to signify her going into this line of work because it's completely different from what she is. And they're cops, so NYPD blue. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. I was just taking it as like they wanted it to be cloudy or something. And so they put the filter on it to make it. But at the same time, it's like what you guys are saying sounds more of a thing for it.
Yeah.
Because nowhere else in that line of like, and nowhere else in that sequence to them getting to where the victim is it cloudy? Like it's not, that color tone isn't there anymore.
Yeah. There were some cool transitions in this.
Can we talk about my favorite one?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, start with you.
It was when I think it was when the dad and the daughter got kidnapped, and then it like pulled all the way back to him.
That was my favorite.
Oh my gosh. I could not. It was. I couldn't tell if I loved it or I hate it, but I just went, whoa.
That is the most 1999 thing in this movie because you don't see that nowadays.
No.
Yeah, I really that one stuck out to me the most. But yeah, like they do some really cool stuff going from scene to scene.
Yeah.
They do a lot of flyover shots of New York. And at one point they go over, I think it's the scene that the opening to that scene where the father and daughter get kidnapped. They fly over Grand Central. And I was like, hey, I know that bridge. That's the bridge from the fight in the Avengers. And I was like, yeah, that is. That's the building that's behind them. That's cool. Battle in New York.
So, yeah, I mean, that's another... this movie just... it struck me when I was in high school.
Yeah.
It really did, because it was just... It was really one of the first Denzel Washington movies that I've seen, that I saw up until that point. Other than the Siege.
Okay. I have a question that I might cut this out of the podcast depending on where this goes.
Good.
How do you guys feel about seeing the Twin Towers in movies now?
Instinctively, every time I see that, I go out loud, "Aw, too soon." Every single time.
Sorry, you
No,
go.
I mean,
You keep on going.
it's a little
I thought
weird.
you were done.
I mean, sometimes it's a little bit weird, but I think it's one of those things where it not that it dates the movie, but it lets you know when it took place.
Yeah.
Like the same way that like a CRT computer monitor does, or like, I mean, not to compare those two things at all, but you know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, this is pre-2001. Got it.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead and say what
Okay.
you were gonna say.
No, it's okay. So my thing, I take it totally at like whenever there's a movie filmed in LA, there's always a shot of the LA skyline. There's always that there's always, I don't know if it's a bell tower or a watchtower, or there's a tower that is
The like circular one?
not the circular one, but that's when I was getting to. But there's like a bell tower or like an old watchtower that's on a hill, and kind of like a urban like home residential community.
The observatory?
It might be, but
Yeah.
there's that one. There's that circular building that's in LA.
Capitol Records.
There's that one. There's also the like really thin white pyramid looking building that they like to show a lot. When movies are filmed in Chicago, they like to show the Sears Tower, which I'll never refer to it as the
Whatever it is now.
They
Willis Tower,
changed
but
it.
that's a nickname. It's the Sears Tower.
Got it.
And then you've got in New York pre 9/11, like if you wanted to let people know, hey, this is taking place in New York, you show the Twin Towers.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just one of those, it just lets you know what time period the movie's in at this point. I don't really, movies that had to change themselves after 9/11, Spider-Man, and
Lilo
movies
and
that
Stitch.
were exactly, and then and movies that the release date was changed because they had to because they were afraid that some scenes in it would like strike people, kind of like Collateral Damage, like that movie. Those are the only movies that make me cringe a little bit watching them, because I know there's a scene missing. I know the original intention isn't there. But when it comes to like this and other movies where they show them, it's like, this is, pre 9/11.
You have stuff like Collateral Damage that's like, oh, we're not going to release this until later.
Yeah.
And then you have shows like 24. It's like, oh, we're leaning into this.
Yeah.
He kills terrorists with towels down their throat.
Yeah.
Like we're just going to lean into this.
Yeah.
I think it, like every time I don't know if it's just because I was so young seeing everything that happened on 9/11. Like every time I see it, I just like part of me gets a little bit sad, and like, it kind of just it still affects me, which is weird.
Yeah. Well,
but like I know like my brother who was born in 2001 is not going to have that reaction.
Yeah.
So
Well, to me, when you see them, I mean, of course, it's one of those things where just seeing them reminds you of it, because anybody that was old enough to be in at least, I would say maybe third or fourth grade has a very clear remembrance of that morning.
Yeah.
Just like any other major tragedy that happens to you. And it's because the Twin Towers was such a landmark for this country, especially for the movie industry, that when you see them, I mean, it's jarring, because like that was part of our national wonders. Like the Twin Towers was like, it's like you've got the Arch in St. Louis, you've got the Seattle Space Needle, you've got different landmarks throughout the country, and the Twin Towers were part of that.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like a national identity. So, I mean, when you see them, and obviously if you're old enough to remember that day, it's going to hit you.
Yeah. And something like this where it's just in an establishing shot is a lot easier to process than like Kevin McAllister on top of the Twin Towers in Home Alone 2.
That scene. Okay, I'll admit, I know that I said that the only movies that really affect me when it comes to that is movies that were affected in their making or like release date, because something happened that made the movie change.
Yeah.
That's the only movie that has the Twin Towers in it that makes me not the most upset at the fact that the scene is still in the film, but it's one of those things where it's like, oh man, I was on the roof of the World Trade Center. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, it reminds you of being somewhere that absolutely nobody can ever experience again.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So moving on from 9/11.
Ooh, heady topic.
Yeah. Yeah, we go from Val Kilmer's throat cancer to 9/11.
Oh man, we are.
Let's talk about
so
the first act of John Wick where a puppy dies.
Oh.
Yeah, so do we want to get into spoilers for a 20-year-old
At this point,
movie?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, why not?
One thing this movie does really well that I have to give it credit for is the Michael Rooker bait and switch. And do you know what I mean by that?
I've heard you bring up bait and switch before,
Okay.
but it's still a concept.
They make you think that Michael Rooker is the murderer the whole time.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
they
then-
absolutely do.
And right up until the scene where you find out he's not, they really lean into it.
Yeah.
And then they're like, nope, not him. It's this other guy that you barely saw in the movie.
The entire time. But if you watch it again, knowing that it's him, and this is one of those things where this is where I realize that I love the fact of how attentive I get is when I watch movies. When you rewatch it the second time, after you know who it is, that it's the like medical tech assistant for the medical equipment. When they're going over the pieces of evidence for the college student in the old stockyard, he comes in and he's like, what are you guys doing? And he's looking around, he's looking at the pieces, and it's like, okay, watching this the first time, you just think that he's just, some nosy tech that's like, oh, cool, they're doing a police investigation. This is interesting. But then knowing that it's him, you start looking like he's smirking.
Right.
Like
And
he's
now he's checking
smiling.
in on
Like
that
this
chest
isn't a look of somebody who's being curious. Like this is the look of somebody who's being entertained by what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I like this movie. Why I started liking this movie even more is the fact that they put those little things in there so that you can continue to watch this movie again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, at a certain point, you run out of things because it's pretty much a straightforward film. But I mean, there's still things in it that you can rewatch it maybe 2 or 3 times and still be entertained by it and pick things up.
So the one thing I did like about that, and specifically who the bad guy was, is I really did like his reasons for doing what he did. I thought that it wasn't too extreme, and it wasn't too like, I just want to watch people die. Like, it was less maniacal villain and more understandable, I think.
So what exactly was his motivation? Because I'm a little bit confused. So he tampered with evidence at murder scenes to frame other people?
No, he was bad at what he was doing.
So what was he doing?
He wasn't good. He was doing what Denzel was doing.
Okay.
He was doing what Denzel was doing, and he messed up, and he decided to take the law into his old hands pretty much and tamper with evidence. So I mean, he did tamper, but he was bad at what he was doing to begin with. And he was being kind of like, he didn't like the fact of somebody else from a different like part of the country coming in and overstepping him pretty much. Like he felt like he got overstepped. And he spent all that time, in prison, and
then somehow became a medical tech.
Right, that part was a little bit of a stretch.
It's a little bit of a stretch that he's the medical tech for the guy that he wanted to murder.
I mean, he was using a pseudonym though. I mean, not that means much, but in the days before the internet, like maybe that was easier to do.
Well, no, they have the internet. They make that very clear that they have the internet.
Well, okay. So
search the internet for this.
Okay. So this is where, Devon, and I love the fact that you mentioned this before. Like you mentioned something about like the slow-mo thing, and you're like, this is the millennial in me that I can't see past and whatever. Yeah. But okay, so for just age range, so people are listening, so they know where I'm coming from with this statement. You two went to high school at the same time. Like you
Yes.
two were in the same
Yeah.
grade, right? So you're two of the same
Yeah.
age.
Yes.
And what's the
Yeah.
age difference between you and I again?
How old are you?
I'm 33.
This gets weird because this is my birthday month. So
like 4 years.
4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 years. Okay. So when I was in my freshman year of high school, you were in 6th grade?
What year was that?
The 99 to 2004, the 99 to 2000 school year.
I was in 4th grade.
4th
And
grade.
then I would have been in 5th grade, yeah.
5th
Because
grade.
I graduated in 08.
Okay. So this is where age comes into play. And this is why I feel like a lot of late 90s movies and like movies that came out in like 2000 and 2001 aren't going to have the biggest fans amongst like your guys' age group. And I know that I'm like nitpicking here over like a 4-year difference.
No, it's fine.
So,
We can take it.
okay. That's
we
fine.
We millennials get dragged a lot.
No, I'm a
Good.
millennial too. I'm on the older end of the spectrum, but
Yeah.
but still I'm still a millennial too.
I'm not saying it's justified.
Yeah.
I'm just saying we get dragged a lot.
I know, believe me,
yeah.
I know. I get dragged too. And this isn't even really a millennial thing. During that time for the internet, like Google didn't exist. Yahoo really didn't even exist at that point. And if it did, if I remember, it was horrible.
It was just Jeeves.
It was
good
Ask
old
Jeeves. I was, yeah, I mean, it was pretty much that. And and that really wasn't the best search engine to really begin with. But anyway, the fact that it's the NYPD and and it's their crime scene investigation like department, their internet service is linked with the state government and partly through the federal government. So they would have access to like the things that they're talking about, blueprints, when things go under, they would have had access to that stuff at that point. But anybody else and prior to like the early 90s, the internet really wasn't like it was a thing, but the only people who really, really, really used it ended up being like millionaires by like 2005.
Yeah.
My biggest thing is, they have access to the internet because they're the NYPD. I get that. That's fine. What I have trouble buying is that they're able to, in an afternoon, bring all of their equipment over to Denzel's apartment and get it all set up and connected and good to go.
It would
I never even
depend.
thought about that.
Well,
Because this
here.
movie takes place within the span of 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
So
Right, because
literally
it's
it's like,
set up in the beginning.
I'm going to help you solve this murder. And then they bring Angelina Jolie over. And then like they find the wife that evening. Like it's all in the same day.
I guess so, yeah.
Because they say the date. He's like, what? 119. It's 11/9. That's today. What time is it? I'm like, oh, it's noon. Okay, well, we have until 4 p.m. So it's all in one day, and like getting everything over there that quickly. Like I like that was just a stretch for me.
That was also a very 90s thing to like show off tech.
Yeah, just
and like
because it was
show
the
off
90s doesn't mean it was
technologically.
right.
No. But okay. So here's the thing. He was the lead investigating. He was the lead investigator for crime scenes in New York City. So anytime something weird happened, he was there. They talk about how, he's read over 1,000 books and he's written dozen. He's done speeches at like national assemblies when it comes to crime scene investigation. My dad was, he worked in the medical field and he worked for a company that did Medicare consulting for billing for small hospitals. The company paid for the local phone and cable and internet service to put in a professional industrial grade internet, phone, and fax line into our house. And he must have had 5 or 6 circuits in the wall just to plug in computers and phones and faxes. Now, with who he was and that apartment that he lived in, I would not be surprised if the NYPD, with him being a salaried detective more than likely, I'm willing to bet anything that he would have had those type of phone jacks and internet jacks in his house that they could have hooked up 5 or 6 computers to.
Didn't they say that his accident happened 4 years ago?
It happened 4 years prior.
Yeah. I mean, so even his bed, like that you saw, like, you know, in the beginning before everybody moved everything in, he had what at the time would have been considered state-of-the-art technology.
Yeah.
He was giving voice commands to a computer to play chess. So he had the hookups already. Like, I think his apartment was as 1990s, like, exciting as it could have been.
Yeah.
I didn't look
And,
at
like,
it that way.
Yeah.
Well, I just did a quick Google search on what the internet in 1999 is. And March 27th, 1999 is when Google acquired Netscape. Or not Google, sorry, when AOL acquired Netscape, making AOL the biggest internet provider. So that's like the level of internet we're talking about right now.
Okay.
Yeah,
So like
America
what they showed
Online.
off is super futuristic.
Yeah. Yeah. So
There absolutely was.
What is your guy? What are your earliest internet memories? Since we're going down this train.
Oh boy.
Stick death.
I remember oh, you got Ryan.
Stick death. You had E-Bombs World was like the first like geek like center of like the internet when it came to like the like they had. So they had games. They had what basically was the creation of like the meme or what would basically turn into the meme. And they had the creation of GIFs of like funny little things. And prior to any type of like search engine that was easy to use, I mean, the late 90s, 98 and 99, and then eventually 2000 saw the birth of like easy to use internet interfaces. Prior to that, it wasn't as easy to use. Granted, there was a lot of like niche websites and it was kind of like the Wild West.
Yeah.
But like it was what they use the internet for in the movie, to me, fits the time period for what they're trying to find. Because at that time, any major city that was starting to get on board of this, like having interconnected networks, they were starting in the mid 90s to early 90s, starting to scan in all of their paperwork. So when he says to her, like, go online and see if you can find, you know, the different, you know, stockyards that, you know, we had in New York, you know, however long ago, that's realistic, you know, trying to find that type of stuff. What I do like in the one scene though is that Denzel asks the guy on the microscope, which I totally forget his name.
Luis Guzman?
Yeah, him.
Yeah.
He asks him to look closer and he looks up and says, "I can't bring that here." You know, so I did like that at the fact that they did show that they, you know, that they could bring all this stuff over, but they were still limited on what they could actually bring. So, I mean, I did like that little thing that they kind of, they still cemented it in some kind of reality. I mean, granted, getting the lab packed up and over to the apartment in like 2 hours in the city of New York, even like 4 blocks away. Yeah, no, that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like flat out, that wasn't going to happen.
All right, Devin, what's your earliest internet memory?
My earliest internet memory is having a computer in the basement of my grandma's house and begging my dad to go onto the Ninja Turtles official website so I could print out coloring pages of the Ninja Turtles and listen to the theme song while I did it, because that was my dream of the internet.
And guess what? That website probably had the ability to print out like maybe the 4 pages that you printed out.
Yeah.
Probably had 2 tracks of like the song that you could play, and had a link to another different web page that had a description of how they made the web page because it was so new of a
Absolutely.
thing. That's all that was on those pages.
Yeah, and I had a time limit because my grandma had to be on the phone too because she liked talking on the phone. So I could only do that for a half an hour while my grandma waited because we were tying up the phone lines.
Yep.
Oh, I love it. Alan?
I remember that basement well.
It's a good basement.
My earliest memory of the internet is we had a I don't even know what computer it was, but we had a computer set up in our living room. We had shitty dial-up internet, and me and my sister wanted to go to Nickelodeon.com because it's Nickelodeon. So
Yeah.
my parents got us onto Nick.com, and it started loading, but then we had to take the car to the garage. So we take the car to the garage, they do their thing. 3 hours later, we come back. It's still not completely loaded. Like, it was so slow. And like,
Oh, I love that.
We were so disappointed. Like, oh, we're going to get home and it's going to be all ready. It wasn't. We never got to Nick.com. I still have never been to Nick.com.
That's so sad.
Okay, so here's where I was happy that my dad had the job that he had, because while other people that I knew struggled with the same things that you were talking about, even in like my age group, I was able to go on my dad's like laptop that he used for work. And when I mean laptop, I'm talking about a compact laptop that was like almost an inch thick when it was
Not
folded.
compact at all.
Yeah, no. So I would go on and I would load up Windows 95 and I'd go on and I'd pull up America Online, sign in. You have the, the sounds, and then you would have to know the website address. And so any of the commercials or any of the magazines that, had these different sites, like they were like, ask your parents for permission and help and go on, because if you put in nickjr.com and go to Nick Jr., you get Nick Jr. But if you spelled neckjr.com, it was a porn site. Like there was no doubt that they
the internet was
they
out
would
for
do that.
5 minutes and everything was porn.
It was. I'm not gonna lie. It was. I mean, and prior to America Online and prior to any of the easy interfaces in the early 90s, it was bulletin boards. Like, have you? I'm going to assume you two have both seen Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so his brother, when he's talking about like talking to hot babes online or whatever, like those weren't like normal like chat groups. Like this wasn't even like the mid 90s like AOL, like chatting on AIM. Like this is, you go onto a website, you type on a board, you close out. It goes up, you wait 2 or 3 minutes, then you log back in, and then you see if somebody replied to you. Like, think of like a non-refreshing, like a forum thread that doesn't refresh automatically. Like you have to log out and log back in again.
Yep.
That's what chatting on the internet was in the early 90s.
Our marching band had one in high school.
What, did they?
Yeah, you don't remember that?
On your Zanga page?
It might have been.
On your Zanga page?
Yeah, we had that. It was like my sophomore or junior year we had that.
Weird.
You were on there. I know you were.
I guarantee you I was on there. I just don't remember. It was all a blur of just hormones and terribleness.
All right. So we're about 40 minutes into this podcast, and we have yet to mention Angelina Jolie by name.
I have a couple
times. What are we doing with our lives?
Well, we haven't really talked about her that much.
So focusing away from the tech and away from the early 90s, I mean the late 90s and all this stuff. Okay, so we have Denzel. I talked about him. I know that you guys kind of touched on him a little bit. This is my favorite Angelina Jolie movie.
Bold statement, Cotton.
This is my favorite movie with her in it.
Okay.
I will, because I mean, here's the thing. When I was young in high school and Tomb Raider came out, I was a teenage boy. Of course I'm going to like the movie, whatever. But anyway, when it came to like her performance, I liked her in this more than anything else she's ever done that I've seen.
Interesting.
I don't think I'm a big Angelina Jolie fan at all.
And I'm not either.
Really?
But I'm just saying, like, this is the one movie that she's in where it's like I'm watching the movie and I don't like, it's like, oh, that's her. You know what I mean? Like they don't. Her character is a normal cop. It's a normal person.
Mm-hmm.
They don't sex her up.
No,
they don't put her in positions that make her half naked. Like
I'll give them credit for that. But the problem is I'm watching this in 2019 where Angelina Jolie has been at the top of the A list for the last 10 years, if not more, 10, 15 years. So seeing her play this, not schlubby sounds bad, but just playing a schlubby cop a beat cop in New York, I don't buy. And that's just because of where I'm watching it now.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that because it's a very different place from where she is now. Like now she shows up in a movie like, I mean, what was the one? She played like Maleficent or something. Yeah, it was Maleficent. She like plays that and it's like Angelina Jolie as Maleficent. And you like, it's like there's a lot of star power behind that name, but she wasn't really well established before this movie, was she?
She was not. This was well before her like launch because
I mean, this was right before her big launch was Girl Interrupted, which came out in '99. So
well, I mean,
and shot in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Here's the thing. Right. When it comes to Girl Interrupted, like she had an amazing performance in that as well. But her acting ability is shown in Girl Interrupted first. And then for me personally, in this movie. And then after that, I believe it was Tomb Raider? It was her. I think that was like her first, like, I'm the main character, like superstar movie.
In '99, Bone Collector comes out. Then Girl Interrupted, where she won the Oscar. Yeah. Then she's in Pushing Tin.
Oh, yeah.
And Gone in 60 Seconds.
I didn't know she was in that.
Comes out in 2000. 2001, you have Original Sin and then Lara Croft.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like... So her winning the Oscar is really what cemented her as A-list, because that's usually how it goes.
Yeah,
sure.
Jennifer Lawrence became A-list when she won an Oscar, even though she was only in like 3 movies.
Yeah,
and the Bill Engvall show.
Yeah, so I mean, to me, like I think just I like her in this movie. Like I feel like her as a B cop to me, because I mean, if you go to New York, I mean the NYPD, the New York Police Department. The New York City Police Department, when you go through all the boroughs and you go through all of the stations and all of the different, like, you know, the normal B cops, the detectives, the like file clerks, the New York Police Department in numbers is bigger than some countries' armies. So, I mean, so to me, New York City, just the way that she looks naturally being a cop, it never really struck me as odd. It was just, oh, she's a younger female officer. And then they also explained
I feel like they did. Oh, go ahead.
And then they also explain kind of a little bit for people that couldn't really take it. They were like, yeah, she was also like a model when she was younger.
I was going to bring that up.
Type deal. And then she found her dad shot.
I would be a lot better with this movie if they didn't do that. Like that pissed me off.
Did they do the model thing?
Yeah, the model thing is stupid. It doesn't need to be there.
Well, here, the reason why I think it fits, the reason why I like the fact that they did it was because they spend so much time about her finding her dad after he committed suicide. And they show her reaction when Denzel Washington is looking at her file and he brings it up and the look on her face and she gets real defensive about it. And of course there's other scenes where she's talking about it as well. But it shows that she was on a completely different life path. Like she was a model. She was going to, her education was going a certain way. And then she found her dad. And then that completely derailed the life that she was going to have. And then she became a cop instead. And then she went to being a beat cop, not even a detective. Like she was, they show her with like a middle-aged, overweight white officer eating a hot dog at a hot dog cart. And she's like, oh, I'll take it. So they're showing that him and her are doing the same job.
It can't be a movie about a New York cop without a scene like that.
Oh, I know.
That's in the contract they signed with the city to film in New York.
I know. But all of that, yes. Given all of that, she's going into child services. She's going into youth protection. And and to me, that's showing that, you know, she has the intelligence to be an actual crime scene detective, to actually, you know, put these puzzles together, but she's floundering because, you know, she's in this, you know, like employment structure that is so big, and she's trying to find a spot for herself, and she's having a hard time, you know. And that's, I mean, I like the fact that they showed that she had like a different life path going on prior to finding her dad shot. Well, committed suicide. That's why I liked it. Mm-hmm. I can understand your grievance, though. I can understand.
I don't know. I don't think I either like loved or hated it. I think it just added some backstory to her character, that it wasn't just like, and one day she appeared. I kind of like that.
I just have a whole problem with that scene because I don't understand why the cop went to the window instead of the door. Is there a reason?
He says that he was knocking on the door.
But she was awake, and if he was, she
was also in a completely like she was also distraught. Like, she was stressed out. Like, there's a reason why they show her and, like, you know, like dealing with the stuff that she was dealing with and being in her apartment and being the way she was. And then it's not until he has to break in through the freaking window to get her attention because she's so zoned out.
It's still weird.
It made a good... I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I thought it was, I mean, as far as the window's concerned, I have no idea. But I did like that then showed that, like, her relationship, whatever it was with Denzel Washington, helped to solve a lot of the problems that she had coming into the movie. And, like, you saw why she had the chip on her shoulder, and then you saw that Denzel Washington solved all of her problems.
Yeah.
Like he always does. And
then by the end of the movie, they're all living happily ever after.
Together.
Which, oh no, she couldn't do beforehand. Question, was the awkward, oh no, I accidentally dropped the evidence on your penis scene a little bit weird for you guys too? Where she was like, look at this little scrap of paper. Oh, now there it is.
And then she messes up his catheter and says it's seizure. That's how I took that. Like, oh, that was fun. But you just put your knee on his catheter and put it in a knot. And now he's having a seizure.
Oh boy, I didn't think about it that way.
Okay, so
Ooh.
A knot. Okay. Okay, so I'm not going to get into it, but I have extensive medical history, and half of it in deals and catheters. So that's all I'm saying. With the type of medical state that he was in, being the type of, that's the one thing that. So they do a good job with him being paralyzed, and they do a really good job on all of the medical aspects of his condition, needing to have a 24-hour nurse, needing to have a catheter, the fact that he can barely move, but he can move his one finger so he can use a mouse, like, you know, using the straw thing to move the bed up and down, like that. All of that was dead on perfect. Almost everything about him and his medical condition was on point, which I loved, because to me it made the movie more real.
Yeah.
That scene was the one scene where I was like, okay, they needed something for her to like set him off somehow, so whatever. But the whole thing with, like, if your catheter is blocked, it's uncomfortable, but you're not going to have a reaction to your catheter being blocked like 2 seconds after it happens. He's going to have a full bladder. The nurse is going to see that he hasn't had urine drained into the bag, and then she's going to check it. It's not going to set him off in a seizure unless, because since he is paralyzed, it's one of the like permanent catheters. So it's got a balloon at the end of it, so it can't pull itself out. I'm not sure if you guys knew about that.
I just blacked out on everything you just said because it hurts.
Okay, so
oh no.
okay. So the type of catheter that he would have had has a balloon on the end of it. So after it gets inserted, they inflate this balloon so that it can't just come out.
Got it.
Okay.
Like it's
okay.
got.
I get what you said. I thought you meant like a balloon on the outside, but you mean like a balloon on the inside.
Inside.
Gotcha.
So it's deflated when it goes in. So it's a normal,
like when they clean out your arteries.
Pretty much, yeah. So they fill it up with, I think it's not air, it's some type of like liquid or something. So it fills up so it can't just come out. I can see him going into a seizure, and this is going to be painful for a lot of people listening. The only way I can see that going into a seizure is that when she put her knee down on the bed, she pulled the catheter, which made it try to pull out.
Oh.
Which would have
Ow.
tugged on the bladder, which would have messed with the muscles, which would have sent him into the seizure. That's the only thing I can think of for why that happened the second she did it.
Yeah.
Now, I do kind of like that scene, though, because that's like the first time because they show that Denzel's character is very intelligent and likes to needle people.
Yeah.
He definitely likes to needle people, and she needles right back. So right then and there, after their like first, like meeting, like he's intrigued by her. He's like, she's witty, she's intelligent. Like he's already interested. And then that happens. And there's a lot of looks back and forth between the two of them of like, she's starting to like him, he's starting to like her. So I liked the fact that scene is in there. It just, from somebody that has experience with catheters in my medical history, ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Devin.
So go ahead.
You go ahead.
I was going to completely switch topic.
No, go for it.
Go ahead.
So while we're talking about his medical condition and all of those things, can we talk about their fight scene at the end? So for those of you that haven't seen the movie, there is a fight scene at the end between the main bad guy and quadriplegic Denzel Washington. And he fights back and almost wins, despite being quadriplegic. Do we think, okay, so during some of it, I was straddling a line between going, I guess that's a pretty contrived reason that he could start to win the fight. I guess that's a pretty contrived reason. His hand hurts, why is he limping? Stuff like that. And then going, this is the best way they could have ever pulled this fight scene off. And I was straddling that line.
My favorite part of that fight scene is when he just collapses the bed on the killer's hand and just smashes it to hell. Because they don't even cut away from that. They just show it all to you. I think that might have been my favorite moment of the movie. Because it makes such good use of his bed. Like him using his environment and everything to his advantage. That he has, because he can only move his head and shoulders, so like all he can do is really bite, and then he does. So
well, and also the part that like struck me a little bit was the fact that he's the guy that he's fighting is his like medical tech, so he knows exactly what parts of him work and what parts don't work, and the first thing he does is break his only functioning finger. And I was like, oh, dick move, guy.
Yeah, it's almost like the killer from the whole movie is the bad guy for some reason.
So weird.
I love the fight at the end.
No, I liked it too.
I think it fits perfectly.
I didn't like the slow-mo when she comes in and kills him.
But I mean,
like I wish the movie would have just ended there, because after that it just gets really bad for me. Like I was not a fan of anything after that fight scene.
But he has a silly tie.
I know. But oh man, like the whole Christmas party scene, like now Denzel has a sister that they haven't mentioned the whole movie until now.
They mentioned.
Did they?
Yeah.
The very beginning.
She asks one of the detectives, well, what about family? And he says, oh, he has a sister, but, he cut them off. He hasn't talked to them in years.
Oh, okay. I missed that.
So, I
was in my fever state.
That's when you were sick. So I totally understand. I mean, don't worry about that. But I kind of liked it because, one, it shows that he lives after that incident. Like, it doesn't set him into like.
Okay, I take back my statement of I didn't like everything after the fight scene. I liked when they showed the empty bed. And there's that split second of, oh my God, he went through with it. Because then you just see the doctor, and then he's in the chair, and I was like, okay, I like that. I like that reveal. Yeah, that's a nice. That's a good trick to play on the audience.
Yeah, good job. Movie.
Yeah. So I mean that I feel like everything I feel like the movie ended the way movies should end that have this kind of like a theme.
Yeah, but the other thing is like the movie ends, and all I could think of was the quote from Speed. At the very end, where Keanu Reeves says to Sandra Bullock, I have to warn you. I've heard relationships based on intense experiences never work. Like I never really buy their relationship throughout the whole movie, and I didn't really buy them as a couple at the end either.
I feel like the actors they picked for this movie fit well for the storyline and fit well for the working relationships that they had. The only time I feel like where their chemistry failed was in their the relationship or like the romance aspect. Like they clicked on everything else. Like it was very believable about, him being the mentor and, her being the student and all like that fit perfectly. Their timing with each other was great. The one thing that was off, and they never did a movie together after this, if I remember correctly.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
So, I mean, and again, I can't say that maybe they didn't like working with each other, because on every other aspect of their characters, they hit a home run with working with each other. It was that relationship thing, but at the same time, and I might be criticized for saying this, I wonder if it doesn't work to a point, or maybe if there's a lot of people out there that maybe don't see it working, because I didn't, like I said, I feel like their chemistry was off for that one part of the relationship. Maybe it's the medical thing.
I mean, maybe.
Like I said, it's a very touchy subject. Very, very touchy subject.
A lot of the time when they're together and not talking about the cases that they're working, it's just dead quiet.
Yeah.
And a lot can be said with silence, but I don't think what they wanted to say was said.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
And the thing is, when I first saw this movie, I didn't really realize that, they like each other until the first time through the movie, and I saw the end where they were together as a couple at the party, and I was like, oh, well, that came out of nowhere. Yeah. And then I'd watch the movie a couple more times. I'm like, that's where they're trying to set this up. That's what they were trying to do. So
I think that was my problem with the whole evidence dropping scene, because I'm like, oh, this is gonna happen now. All right.
Yeah.
Because it's the thing is, the way they set it up is that he's himself. She gets offended. She pops off at him, and then he needles back, and then she needles back, and then he gives her a look, and that look is of being intrigued. And then after that, it's going back and forth. He's tough on her. And then she, has her spat of no, I can't do this. And then he gets her back into it.
Yeah.
And then there's the trust build up with him going through her personnel file, which that was a weird sentence to say. He builds up her trust by going through her personnel file. And then he says comforting things to her, and then she gets, emotional, and, she, decides to, just go ahead and go with it. So, I mean, there's undertones to some of the scenes of them building up their romantic relationship between the two characters. Mm-hmm. It's just, like I said, I feel like on every other aspect of the movie and of their characters, they had perfect timing, and they worked off each other really well. I feel like with everything else going on in the movie, that might have been why it didn't come through. Maybe that's why they had a hard time trying to get that to link up, because of everything else that was going on.
I have another theory.
Okay.
So I'm looking at trivia on IMDb. Angelina Jolie has admitted in interviews that she shot nude scenes for this movie, but the director cut them, feeling they distracted from the story. Which, they would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in what context were there nude scenes?
Maybe she might have been changing.
There were scenes that help establish this relationship more.
Maybe.
But
I wonder if there were nude scenes with the boyfriend at the beginning.
I mean, maybe, but
that's the only thing I can think of.
I feel like it always would have come across as gratuitous. I feel like it would have been something stupid, like she's showering now after her hard trauma or something like that.
Yeah.
And to be honest,
necessary.
That would have cheapened the entire movie.
Of course.
Because just the storyline, I mean, granted, it's a typical, cops needing to solve a crime, thing. But I would feel like that would take away from what is good about this movie. What its strengths are.
Looking at this trivia, I have another problem with this movie now that I didn't realize
Oh no.
To confuse audiences and increase tension, Michael Rooker played the mask killer in several scenes. That kind of just really just pisses me off.
Wait, really?
Because I knew that was Rooker under the mask. I've seen him enough in interviews and I've seen Guardians of the Galaxy enough that I've seen his eyes and shit. I knew that was Rooker. And I was like, okay, so this isn't where, like, I'll give him credit for going that way, but don't put him in the mask.
Okay,
Right.
so this probably goes to my like linear, like, because I only like to break down movies and like, you know, do the whole like switch thing and like think about that. Like if the movie is like, oh my God, there's so much stuff in this film, but this is just a straight up like cop drama, that I didn't even think that they were trying to peg Rooker as like the villain throughout the film. I didn't think they were actually trying to do that, because I just thought they were just trying to show that he was an asshole cop. I just thought that they were trying to show that he was like a like
Interesting.
That he was just like, you know, like a weak, emotional, like strong-headed person, because you do have those people.
Oh yeah, I mean definitely.
Where they are weak
so you think
emotionally.
He was playing more of a trope than like a red herring.
Exactly. Like he was just playing like the thorn in their side.
I think he was playing both. And I think the way that he's like, as much as he hates everyone else, he really hates Angelina Jolie's character, which I found weird. His hatred towards her was just so, it was really off-putting compared to everyone else. Well, everyone else is just kind of indifferent, but like just towards her, it was.
Here's how I took that. When she was a beat cop and she finds the guy buried by the train tracks, he gets out of his car, or he gets out of the car, and he's dealing with like he's talking with the detectives, and he's talking with like the more higher ranking officers. She's a beat cop.
Yeah,
he's mean to her as a beat cop. They show him again in the apartment when they build up the lab. And he's talking to them, but they're all ignoring him.
Yeah.
Right.
And I really, really think, because to me, this is how I took it, is that, and this is where I got the whole like weak, you know, like strong-headed, you know, weak and strong-headed but weak emotionally, was where he got this position and he's very insecure about it. So he only talks with people who are in other leadership positions, and he doesn't even want to deal with anybody who's below a supervisor-esque type position. And then on top of that, when he yells at her, it's because, you know, by stopping that train, you know, who knows how many trains were canceled or diverted because of that one having to stop for like 12 hours.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's looking at things in a different perspective, a wrong perspective, to be bluntly about it.
I mean, the train thing, I don't know who's right on that one, because that is a major headache, just stopping one train.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. I think we need to wrap this up. Any other final thoughts on Bone Collector?
No, I don't think I have too much.
Anything?
The only thing, the last thing I have to say is that this movie made me think of another Denzel Washington movie that I haven't seen.
Okay.
John Q, where he's in the hospital and it's his son's in the hospital and he like shuts it down because he wants to get the medical stuff his son needs. Like he sells his house. I haven't seen that movie.
I've seen that one.
And I really, really want to. And I was talking to my wife about that. And like I said, I love Denzel Washington. I love his films, but I haven't seen all of them. And so it's a point now for myself. I am going to buy all of his movies.
Yeah.
Not all of them, because I have to look on IMDb to see what he's in. But
yeah,
I mean,
so
I'm going to make it a point to like get as much of his stuff as I can.
Real quick before I give my final thoughts. He did Fences a few years ago.
He did.
Okay.
And I collect screenplays, and you guys both know this.
Yeah.
I was in Second and Charles the one day, and I found the screenplay for Fences. I was like, wait, isn't this just the play? Like, what's the difference? This should pretty much be the same thing, only maybe some like screen direction. I just thought that was funny. All right, my last thought on this movie, and it's fitting that we're talking about this at the very end, is I hated the Peter Gabriel song at the very end.
I did too. Oh my god! Yes,
it's not just me. My wife yelled at me for being crazy because it's like I was not happy about it.
No, it was so awkward. Good. Okay, I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah, it's so like it does not fit at all.
I tried to like analyze the lyrics when it was playing, and I'm like, does this have to do with what was just going on the screen? Is this a romantic journey? But nope. I was just like, Peter Gabriel was popular then, and we're gonna put him in the movie.
Was he though? Was he really popular in '99?
I don't know when Peter Gabriel was popular.
Or the song is called "Don't Give Up," so I guess it does tie into the whole "Hey, don't commit assisted suicide." Like I guess it plays into that because it's a duet with him and Kate Bush. I know the name Kate Bush for some reason. Why do I know that name?
George Bush's sister. No, not that one. Okay,
no,
I tried.
I don't think so. Yeah, Ryan, this is your movie, so what do you think of it?
It was never weird for me. I just thought that it was like it fit.
Well, you saw this back when it came out, so back then this was a thing. Nowadays, you don't really get a pop song to go with. I don't know, Black Klansman. Like
there was one.
Like...
Okay. So this is one of those things where I think you asked me this once before, like, or Devin, it might have been you, like how I take older movies. I think we're talking about Mary Poppins, about the whole like sped up film thing, and it's like
absolutely,
it's like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah,
I spent a lot of time at home when I was a kid because I was sick. So I watched a ton of movies in like the mid and like mostly in like the mid to late 90s. And the stereotype for 90s movies when it came to music was like Godzilla with it was
We've
loaded.
Talked about this.
It was loaded with pop music.
Yeah.
It was loaded with rock and top 40 and hip hop or whatever. And to me, it's just like we kind of talked about with the whole like Twin Towers thing. Like the movie it was made in the late 90s. It's definitely a late 90s film. There are parts of this that haven't aged well. And there's a lot of movies in the 90s that haven't aged well because of their soundtrack.
Here's the thing though. Like a lot of those movies from the 90s that have the ridiculous soundtracks make sense because they're popcorn movies. Like Armageddon and Aerosmith. That's a ridiculous premise for a movie. So don't want to miss a thing. Completely goes with that. That's the kind of movie that should have a pop song on its soundtrack. Batman Forever should definitely have Kiss from a Rose and that U2 song because it's so Batman Forever. It's the introduction of bat nipples. If you don't have a slow ballad on that soundtrack, that becomes a huge pop hit that Devin hates. Like,
what a terrible song. Point? Oh my God.
Well, at the same time though, like you've got to remember the time period of what this movie was made. Like to me, it fits.
But what I was trying to get at before I diluted and just talked about Devin's hate of Chris from a Rose is this movie, like tone wise, it does not fit that. It does not fit that group of movies. Like this is a thriller. Like it's not a popcorn movie. This is like a true crime detective story that's intense and like it just doesn't fit.
Then like Peter Gabriel happened.
And this is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
For the time period this movie was made, for the type of music they had in this movie, because I mean there wasn't really a lot of like actual like music, like top 40 like radio music in this movie. So I totally understand where you're coming from about it. Like, you go through this and it's more of just like the normal like dramatic like soundtrack type music where it's it's just like it's an orchestra playing in the background. Totally understand that you're saying that it's jarring at the end, but if you were to look at a lot of movies that were straight up dramas, straight up thrillers. This movie, other films, they all, I would say about 70% of them had a top 40 song in it from either the 90s or the 80s towards the end of the film. And it's a thing. It's just like with the period thing. It's a period thing. So for that time, the execs, whoever made those decisions, thought that it was a fitting song to have at the end. Who knows? Maybe Peter Gabriel had a cousin that owed him a favor who was in the boardroom for this movie or something.
I love how your excuse for this song is Peter Gabriel was owed a favor.
It's not an excuse.
I love that. So
the excuse, the excuse is that it's the time period.
Yeah,
I'm not going to hate on a movie that has sped up film from the 60s because it's from the 60s.
The problem with it is like where a lot of those movies succeed in having a song that fits the genre that it's in.
Yeah,
and it works. Peter Gabriel doesn't fit. Like watching this movie 20 years later, it just doesn't fit.
Here's
my
the
wife
thing.
wants to kill me.
Here's the thing.
I mean,
here's the thing. 20 years later, from somebody who was in 4th grade when this movie came out, it doesn't fit. I would 100% back you on that. I will back your opinion. I'm fine with that. From somebody who saw this movie when I was at least a freshman in high school, and I can remember the type of radio music that was on the radio, that was on the pop station, that were on the country stations, that was on the rock stations, from the music that they played in TV shows, from the music that they played in other movies. For the time period, Peter Gabriel and that song is fine and makes sense because of the lyrics, Devin, because of what you were saying.
Yeah.
For the end of this movie. I'm fine 20 years later looking at this from a modern point of view and saying, what could make this movie fit better for a more modern audience? Let's make these tweaks. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But for this movie being made in 1999, having this be the original cut that was originally released, to me, as long as you understand that this is a pre-2000, pre-early millennium film, it makes sense.
Okay.
It's what they did in almost all the movies. So yes,
I'm
your wife and I are on board, are on like almost the same page with this.
I mean, here's the thing: is I totally get you, Ryan. I understand that because, like, I don't know if any of you have seen the Netflix like documentary series, The 90s. But you're right. This is the shit they did back then. Like there was a cop drama that was also a musical that was a TV show that came out in the 90s. This
Cop
totally
Rock?
tracks with what, is that what it's called? Is it Cop Rock?
I think so.
That was the thing. This tracks what they did in the 90s. As a modern moviegoer, just meh, I don't think I like it. So I'm like splitting both of your opinions because I get what the 90s was going for and I hate it. And we continue to hate it.
And that is fine, as long as you admit that the reason why you don't like it is because you're a modern moviegoer and you expect certain things to be a certain way. And you know what? I will totally agree that the more modern way of making films, like for the past, like I would say maybe like 12 years, I really like. Outside of a couple films that were made prior to like this timeline, but at the same time, a lot of films that are still timeless today, like Silence of the Lambs. That movie, even though it's dated by tech and cultural reasons, is timeless and it still fits. It can still scare the crap out of somebody today.
Yeah.
And it's because of the way that it's made is almost dead on to how they would make that movie again today. So that's why I feel like a lot of classics from like the 70s, 80s, and 90s, even though they might not have been very popular back then, are are getting a lot of attention now. And it's because they didn't do the mold of like an 80s film or a 90s film. And that they made the movie to like show a purpose, have a meaning. Everything that they put in the film was for that meaning. Everything's connected. And that's how movies are now.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, if you have a song like Peter Gabriel that they have at the end of Bone Collector. If they would have made that today, they would have wanted to find a song that had the same meaning behind it, but probably had a little bit of a different tone.
I think for a movie like this, though, going with any pop song is just kind of weird because you don't have any pop music throughout the movie at all. Like, not even when she's getting the hot dog at the hot dog stand. Like just stick with the score. Like, do violins playing out the credits. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
And again, and I know this is going to sound ridiculous. That's more of a modern view on it. And for that, you're right. But for when this movie was made, it fits. Yeah. Audiences left this movie not, going, oh my God, they're sitting there towards him like, oh my God, this is a great movie. And then Peter Gabriel comes on and then half the audience goes, what? No. Do you want to know what happened inside the movie theater? Peter Gabriel came on at the end of this movie and they were like, they didn't even this is a really good movie because they didn't even think about it because that's just what they did. Peter Gabriel coming on, I would say probably, okay, so 1999, this movie comes out. How much money this movie made? Like maybe $10 a ticket. Divide how much it made by that in the US. So you might talking about maybe in the year 1999, you might have had probably 20 people who heard Peter Gabriel in the theater when this movie first released and have your reaction to it.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
That's all I'm going to say.
All right. Yeah.
I mean,
I'm not going to discredit your opinion, though.
We've beaten the Peter Gabriel horse to death.
No, it's tail twitched. Devon.
Okay. Well, since I brought him up earlier, and he's on my mind right now, I want to watch a movie next week that's the second best use of Seal in motion pictures.
Okay.
Have you guys ever seen Pop Star Never Stop, Never Stopping?
What?
Is that the one where he's in the bathroom of in the preview?
I don't know. It's a mockumentary with Andy Samberg.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Have you seen this, Devin?
No.
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I know of it, but I haven't seen it.
Tune in next week where I have these guys watch Pop Star Never Stop, Never Stopping. For you have to watch this podcast, I'm Alan.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Devin.
And take it, Peter Gabriel.
In this proud land we grew up strong. We were wanted all